All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a 9th edition of the Live Conversations here at the Aga Khan University Hospital. Aga Khan University, yes. We're excited to have an exciting team of panelists, and we appreciate you guys joining us today, and also to the online team. And I think without much further ado, I will welcome James Smart to take over.
All right. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Parents, do we have parents here? I feel a sense of just saying, parents, good evening, good afternoon. It sounds like a better way to open up this conversation. But anyway, good afternoon. You're all well? All right. I promise this is going to be a fantastic conversation, the ninth edition of the Live Conversation series. We believe we've been doing this, for a very long time. And this is another topic that is very close and dear to all of us, partly because all of us don't know what we're doing. And that's just the truth, all right? I've tried to sit with the panelists and everyone else and try to pick out if there's anyone with a cheat code, but I guarantee you zero. No one has a cheat code. So we are all fine. I'll ask you to drop your guard. We all don't know what we're doing, and we're going to experiment and talk to each other and find out if there's things that we can all pick from each other. Is there lessons to learn and that sort of thing. But before I go much further, allow me to ask my esteemed panel to please take a moment to introduce themselves, and most importantly, how they find themselves here, mostly as parents, before we go far. Let's start from the further end.
My name is Stanley Mukolwe. Been married for, it's going to be 40 years in May. We have 3 grown children.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. We have 3 grown children, 3 grandchildren. We're the founders of an organization called Raising Future Parents, where we train parents to look at their children as future parents, to see into the future. And we rebuild families and strengthen the nation.
Thank you very much. A lot to learn from you.
And my name is Stella Njoroge, a HR professional, a mother of 4 girls, and almost 20 years old, not almost 20, and the others are teenagers, 18, 16, and 14 years old. And I have been married for 21 years and parenting for 20 years. Thank you.
My name is Lukoye Atwoli. I'm a professor of psychiatry and the dean of the Medical College East Africa. And your host here at the Live Conversations. I don't know if I should repeat what the others have said, but it might make me look completely inexperienced. But I've been married more than 20 years, and I've been parenting 4 boys, incidentally, who are around the same age as Stella's daughters. So we need to talk. Thank you.
That was not the topic of today. But anyway, matchmaking, yes. Perhaps this is the next topic for the next one. Please.
Hi, afternoon. My name is Tatiana, otherwise known as Mama Olive. I'm a content creator, photographer, and I started a company that aims to empower mothers, specifically mothers, to build a safe space, to build a village, because motherhood can be one of the most loneliest things that you can go through. And I think building a village for moms where they can come and feel seen, heard, feel vulnerable. So that's the aim of my company. And so I organize events every year for moms. I'm also a podcast host, and I am a single mother to 3 kids, to 3 young girls.
I feel we should start with you, Tatiana. All right? And yes.
Should we?
We should. Tell me, as just from your point of view and your perspective, do you think, from what you're doing, raising children, being a single mother, having a company, and being all it's, having online, does it seem like, it seems to me like it's an easy job? But please, you might know better than I do.
It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. Obviously, I don't have anything to compare it to. I became a mom quite young. But luckily, I mean, what do you think? You think parenting is easy, or the job that I have.
It's horrible.
Yeah, it's
Parent-
horrible.
yeah.
It's really horrible. It's the worst thing on earth, but it is the most fulfilling. I love my kids to death. I wouldn't be able to be here if it wasn't for them. They really pushed me to where I am today. I wouldn't be able to be doing the things that I'm doing. And yeah, it's not easy to run businesses as well as be a mom, but at the same time, what I do is amazing because I get to be so flexible with my time. So I don't have a 9-to-5 job. I get to be there for my kids with whatever it is they're doing. Every school, anything to do with school, I'm there. Anything to do with after school activities, I'm there. Dentist appointment, I can make it. So I'm just really grateful to have the job that I do because I'm able to be really present in my kids' lives.
So you're possibly the best person to answer this question. Who's parenting your children?
I am.
Fantastic.
I am parenting.
All right. Prof, pretty much that's the same question. It's something that we see it in different circumstances of how we parent children. And let's zoom out a little and look at the whole country. What I have seen happen is we pay school fees and you're like, go. Those teachers are going to teach you stuff, all right? And you come back in the evening, pet you a bit, have dinner, please sleep. Then tomorrow repeat process. Then over the weekend, let's go to some fancy place. I feed you some terrible food. This is parenting. But please, I might be wrong. Is this what's parenting?
You have described one model of parenting.
Yes.
Because that too is parenting. My view is firstly, we parent partly the way we were parented when we were children. So we learn how to parent by observing how our parents treated us. That's how we try to treat our children. Often we have to tweak it because we are living in a different environment from what our parents lived in. We are doing different jobs from those our parents did. Our kids are going to different schools or living in a different environment. So you have to use the experience you learned from observing parenting growing up, because nobody sat you in a classroom and told you this is how we parent in this part of the world, and then tweak it to suit where you're raising your children at. The key message from the research and what we look at is there's good enough parenting. There's no best parent, there's no worst parent, there's just good enough parenting for your children. And you probably can't even transfer that to another set of children. Because parenting is very contextual, is based on where you are, where you're coming from, and the environmental context that you are in. And so, yes, depending on the goals of your society and how it is designed, it might be a society where taking children to school and then you going away to work and then meeting up in the evening and weekends is a model of parenting, if that's what your society has set itself up as. Another society might set itself up and say, no, we want different outcomes. So we will try and design those outcomes by having our parents spend a lot more time with their children. So we will give them time off. We will have shorter working days. We'll do what? Because our goal is that the children should turn out in a certain way. And so they design it that way. And that's also parenting. All right? So there's very few parents who set out to misparent their children or to harm their children. I have tried looking into the literature and I haven't come across any who deliberately goes to get children so that they can cause harm to them.
So you're saying there's no bad parenting at all?
I'm saying there's good enough parenting.
Good enough?
Yeah.
Okay, Prof, you're being clever.
I am clever indeed.
How did you say that?
Yeah, but the truth is, yeah, there are things society judges,
Right.
Because society often sets norms and mores and says this is good and this is bad. And it is within those parameters that we do our parenting. And so when we do things that are outside those norms, then you might find circumstances where society says you're parenting badly because you're not keeping up to the norms we have set. Those norms might not be norms that are universally applicable, which is why I'm saying you can't say it is good or bad, because those norms might not be universally applicable. How you raise children in Huisero, where I come from, is very different from how you raise children in Antwerp, in the Netherlands, or in Belgium, or wherever it is. They have different norms and mores, and they have certain things they allow which are not allowed where we come from. And there are certain things we allow that are not allowed in those settings. And again, across time, there are certain things we allow today that in 10 years, we would say that is bad parenting. There are certain things that were allowed when I was being parented, that if I allowed with my children, you guys here would be in an uproar saying, you guys, you're misparenting your children. So what I say is there's good enough parenting based on the context. When you say good or bad, you're saying it from a particular standpoint, which might not be universally applicable.
We'll come back to that. I'm sure there's many questions to that, but let me go to Stella, HR professional. All these good enough parented people come to you, bare minimum, but it's good enough, the prof has said, so can't compete with that. They come to you. Just give me a trend of what you see, you know, of a period of working through and say, these are the people that walk into interviews and you can tell, you know, somewhat this is good enough parenting.
Wow. That's a big one, considering that the children are your children that we are parenting. But what I've experienced at the HR level, and particularly as a recruiter, is that when they first come for the interviews, even if they're sitting, many of them, they're on their gadgets. So they do not take that opportunity to know each other. They don't interact with each other. When they come to the interview room, a good number of them are extremely confident, which is good. But there are a few of them who are very, very nervous that you have to help along. That doesn't mean that they cannot be potentially good employees, but they need a bit of help. Eventually, when they come to the workplace, you have to be very gentle with the way you interact with them, because I believe it's the way we have brought them up at home. And I try to put myself in the situation of how I brought up my girls. I have certain expectations of how they are going to be treated. And I try very hard to treat them in that particular way because I know and I've noticed that they're extremely fragile. So it's a changing space that we are hopefully changing with.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me get to Stanley. You, as you said, train parents to be parents. How does that look like in this context? Give me the context of today, where there's different versions of what we think parenting is. As the prof has said, that, you know, there are things we are trying to run away from, perhaps, that happened to us, that how we were parented. Maybe when we were parented, you know, it was strict families, as an example, right? You know, don't do this, don't go, don't. There's a lot of don'ts, all right? And this new age is, okay, explore, all right? Let's see what perhaps you're good at. You know, let's work with your limitations or opportunities. But talk to me about this parenting of parenting. How does that look like?
Yeah, we have observed that about 80% of Kenyans come from dysfunctional homes. And I'm just pausing for that to sink in. But as Prof says, nobody starts out to damage their children. Nobody has, every parent loves their children, but many parents don't know how to love them. Many parents are not available to love them. Many parents have no boundaries for their children. These don'ts that people push back against, they're the parameters. Traffic lights, when they are red, they're telling you don't. Because when they are red for you, they're green for somebody else. So the don'ts are not negative altogether. They are boundaries. Between these boundaries, you have freedom. And boundaries actually give freedom. Think of you driving on a road with a mountain on one the and escarpment on the other and no barricade. You feel very insecure. The barricade prevents you from falling into the escarpment. So what we are finding is that there are people who have come from very dominant parenting homes, and they hate the way they were raised. They were pushed by their parents to perform, so it was all about performance. They did perform. They are doing well academically. They are doing well in their jobs, but relationally, they are struggling. And when all is said and done, relationships matter. Then there are those who are very permissive and set no boundaries. The dominant parents have too many boundaries and they really push their children, but they are lacking in relationship. They may be physically present, but emotionally disconnected. And so they are always pushing for performance. We want parents to become firm, but loving and available. Tatiana says she's raising her children. She is available. She goes to their events. We want parents to be available to their children. You can delegate tasks, but you must never delegate a relationship.
Wow, very heavy things. I suspect we should first listen to teachers in the room because of this question of performance, because it's come up quite a lot. That it appears almost like the first function of a parent is to push your children to be a performer of sorts. All right, and you are the ones who deal with this in the first instance. All right. Now we have other things, the coaches and everyone else. Everyone wants their child to be in the Olympics. Everyone wants their child to be superstars. But let me start with the teachers in the room, perhaps, here with Mwalimu. How does that look like today in the setting of just how you see different parents and the children that come through in terms of this question of being pushed to be performers? They have to perform and they need to perform.
Thank you very much. My name is Maurice Mugalizi. I'm a teacher at the Aga Khan Academy, Nairobi. I want to connect the dots from what we've heard from the panelists. Prof saying it's not good enough to parent. And Stella has brought in the issue of fragility. And he has brought in the issue of availability. Those are the gaps we always experience in the learners. What you are not doing at home, we end up doing it for you at school. And remember, we are doing it for you, and I also have my own. So that gap, which you may not be able to identify, it is us who will come in to step in and to try and harness. It's good, yes, when you are raising these children, there is a reason why you gave birth to that child. To me, I think even before you come to that parenting, the process of being a parent, you thought about it. There was a desire, there was a need. You are ready. There was emotional connection. And you said, yes, it is time. So I believe it is important that you have to take that cognitive responsibility to be able to raise up the child.
How does that look like?
I may not be able to give you the actual context, but now it will fall back to what he said about the availability. I, as the parent, am eager to look for more money at the expense of my child at home. Yes, there is responsibility that I need to take care of. I need to feed the child. I need to give shelter. I need to do so many things. So my mind is so fixed that I need to get this extra coin. And that's why you are working from morning to evening. Your child never sees you. And there is that disconnect. The father figure is lacking. The mother figure is lacking. And this is where now we find issues in the schools. Most of the discipline issues in the schools are created from home. So we struggle a lot to see how well we can be able to mitigate this and to make sure that we are raising an ethical society, of which in some cases, parents will deny. I know my child, I've given birth to this child 100%. I don't know what you are telling me as your teacher. And you forget almost 90% of the day, it is us you are spending with your child. You are only meeting them 2 hours or 1 hour for dinner and you go to bed. So really, the actual parenting is in schools for most of the time.
Okay. Prof wants to come. He's
So I hear all the comments that have been made, but I would go ahead and say that when it comes to the academic environment, I can speak about Kenya because I've seen other countries as well, but there's a disconnect between the academic environment and objectives and the absence of an educational philosophy and our parenting style. If we were raising our children to be fit humans in our society, then we would have a parenting style that works towards that, and we would design an education system that furthers that goal, and ultimately there would not be a mismatch. Because it's okay to have a society where parents work from 8 to 5. It's okay. If that is in line with your goals as a society. If you say we want people to be working all the time, so that means then you have to pay a price that your children will spend the time with somebody else. That you can have other goals. But in this country, because we don't have those goals that we have explicitly thought about, we are flying blind. So me, I have my own philosophy of parenting. I have my own goals for my children. They might be a mismatch from the goals of my neighbor, and they might be a complete mismatch from the goals of education and the academic system. And that's where the conflict comes in. So before I blame a parent for not being there for their child, I have to ask myself, why isn't this parent there for their child? So I look here in this room and I see parents who are at work and their children are somewhere else with somebody else. Because if they don't do this, they will not be able to afford the things that they think their children need. So we have to have a deeper conversation around what are we trying to achieve with parenting at the individual level and at societal level, and are those the same? And then we have to think, how do the structures we have built in this country advance that goal? The education system, the health system, the work environment, and so on. How does this gel with our goal of how a human being should turn out at the end? But because we haven't had this conversation, you will have as many opinions in this room about all those things I have listed as there are people in here.
Let's have those opinions, right? Let me listen from the room, right? What do we think is the major thing? What is parenting first? From what, as many opinions in this room, right? Is it making sure that your child is a performer in school first, is academically inclined or not? They have to perform because society requires that. What do you think parenting is? I just want to have opinions about that first before we move to anything else.
I think Prof has summed it. Parenting is everything that he has said. You cannot parent alone because there's the society that there's the macro environment and there's the micro environment. If we truly understood what he has just said, then the conversation is actually over. If we truly understood.
We still have time.
Yeah,
it will be unfortunate if
because
this conversation.
if truly understood the depth of what he has said.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm an educator. I know you're asking what parenting is, but being a storyteller, I'll try to be brief also. I'm a mother of 4, 16, 14, 8, and 9. And the parenting when I was 24 is not the parenting that I am giving right now when I'm 40, because I parented my son differently at 26, rushing for a master's, corporate high flying, and like my fellow teacher is saying, I'm paying the price to have one of the most indisciplined person in a high-end school.
No,
but
not indisciplined, just
indisciplined,
good enough.
From a, let's say,
Good
from
enough.
a good
Let's
enough, fine. Minimally, so
Yeah.
so when I look at how my 16-year-old has turned out because of my absence and making sure I am living the dream is very different when I look at how my 8 and 9-year-old, who I raised personally, just like sorry, I forgot the name. Tatiana.
Yeah.
Yes, unaona hizo jina ngumu za wazungu. So just like Baba Tatiana, where did you get the name?
Yeah.
So, just like Tatiana is saying, I look at a very different product in my 8 and 9-year-olds for whom I have been present, for whom I've had the maturity that Professor is talking about, for whom you've been present in different ways, and also maybe economically you are at a different position. You're able to choose what job you could take and what job you couldn't. So parenting is many things.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes,
because from what you say, you need to be present.
Yes.
And because there's an economic question there, because now you're parenting better.
Yes.
So you're suggesting that if you're not present, you cannot be a good parent?
Most of the time, yes. And I will hit you like this because I have taught different kinds, all levels, international students. Like I teach students in the UK, in America. I teach Kenyan students because being online, so I have access to a lot of homes. Having a I don't know, countries with higher GDP or something, they might parent better, like high GDP, Scandinavian GDP, not American GDP, that kind of, you know, what we're talking about. When I look at my Muslim, for example, when I look at my Muslim parent or families, how they parent may be very different because the mother more or less is very present. There's a business around where the mother is able to be there. It's very different for some of us who now maybe at 8 o'clock you're not there, auntie is there parenting. It's a very important question. Who is parenting your children? But Prof, I like 250, 100s under what is just said.
Okay, all right. Let's hear to Papa Tatiana here. Is this on stage exactly how you wanted it to be? All right, your parenting worked well. What did you do to achieve this?
I already answered that. I know. It's a no.
The first thing I'll say is I didn't achieve this. She did.
All right.
For me, parenting is, first of all, unconditional love. Definitely availability. You must spend time with your children. Somebody mentioned something about a guardrail next to the road.
Yes, yeah, Stanley did.
I like that a lot. That guardrail actually gives you more freedom. I think that's what you said?
Yes.
That struck home with me. Another thing I would say is your children are individuals. So you're raising them up collectively, but hopefully you're able to identify. You must know your children. You must know them because they have their own individuality. And that's why time spent with them is very important, because otherwise you're just raising to a formula, which I don't think is, now I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, and they have to be confident that you will always be there. And the other thing is, so some people always say things and then they don't do them. Obviously, that will happen sometimes. But when that happens, their reaction should be, oh, there must be something that stopped him, mom or dad, from doing that. Not that there they go again. And then they have no faith in. So you need to have a high level of reliability so that they are, when you say something, they believe you. And that's the way that trust comes about. You asked me, how did I do that? And I said, I didn't do that. She did that because it was about the environment that she provided, and then the guardrails, and then she goes where she's going to go. And then you're just there, oh, watch out, do this, do that. And you encourage. Someone was talking about competition. I think you were talking about competition. I watched a lot of, she was a Kenyan swimming champion. I was always there.
Oh, we did not.
He always finds a way to bring this up.
Brilliant.
Conversation. 33 years later.
So, I think the trick is to really encourage.
Right.
To appreciate it, but not to push it. There's a funny balance.
What is success?
You're there all the time.
So yeah, I get it. What is success? If she wasn't a swimming champion, if she wasn't doing all those things, what is the success in your mind as a parent? How do you define that?
Well, she's grown up. She likes herself. She's confident. she's, I guess, realistic. You have to be a bit realistic sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's enjoying her life. She likes what she does, but she's also resilient, very resilient. You need resilience, otherwise things will grind you down. Somebody here was talking about environment. Create the environment that is appropriate. I can't remember who was saying that. But I would also say that is also very important, and that's what you can do. But there's also the side of nature. And there's always been this philosophical conversation, nature versus nurture. And what is that balance? So you'll do the nurture, and if you do it very well, very well. But there'll also be something that comes from them that you might not expect. And so there's always, you cannot control everything. It's, you know.
All right, I hear you. There's anyone in the audience with a burning issue before I move from this point? All right.
Thank you. Thank you, James. My name is Bolo, an early years practitioner, currently heading Aga Khan Academy Nursery. I wanted us to talk more about the issue of being there. We have a lot of parents who the mothers have opted to stay at home, and I respect that, to take care and bring up the children in early years, putting their careers on hold just to nurture these little ones. But they will bring the child to school in home clothes, hiding the uniform behind because this little one refused to put on the uniform. Okay? So you can definitely tell this parent has no voice. And the moment the child comes to me and what's the problem? Oh, Miss Polo, she's refused to put on her uniform. Come, let's put it on. And bang, 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 it's on and they're in class. So I would really like us to understand this being there for your child. What do we mean?
I think you have the manual for children. So I'll let you leave it there, because let's take the microphone this side. But I want us to come to this point of, and it's being raised, of just good enough parented children. This is a term that I'll pick for the rest of my life. Just good enough. They're not bad. They're not, challenged, but good enough. But please.
Yes, my name is Richard Mugata. I'm working with the National Council for Children's Services. When we look at parenting, that's the question one asked. Then as I hear from our conversation, we are talking so much about ethical approach to parenting. We have also Lego approach to our parenting. Not all children have their parent to be with them. And so when we're looking at parenting, we're not really singling out the biological parent. For if the child really has a biological parent, that is a good thing. But we have these children who are born and they have no biological parent. We have this child who is born and the father says, not your father. And he ceases to be a father from the first day of the child. And so forth and so forth. So the theory that nobody bears a child to hurt them, I may not be very confident to say yes about it.
It's okay to say yes. It's okay. It's fine.
I would say no. I would say no. They are there. There are those who.
Okay. It does not exist. That there are people who have children.
We have people who get children and they didn't want to get children. And from the onset, that child is not accepted. So when I look at parenting, then one, there is the role of the biological parent, and two, there is the society. And that's where then the government comes in. Because Professor said about, okay, it's the value system that have been imposed, and therefore they will judge you according to the values. Then I think the government then imposes values. and says, this is the way we want you to take care of your your children. You have to be with your children. You have to be responsible. You have to be, that is what comes now, what I then call legal approach to parenting. So that it is required by the society, and therefore I think the government speaks the voice of the society, that you do A, B, C, D with the child. But at the end of the day, we are saying that we have a duty as adults to take in children and guide them through their lives. And to me, I think parenting is just a process of guiding a child so that the child may live a responsible life, what we would call responsible life. And you see, the word responsible also is a value system, which I think we need to look at it. I think that's what I would say at that stage.
Okay, I want to come back here because one of the things that has picked up a lot, from Tatiana and I think from all this is the idea of parents being present. That you have to be there for these things to happen. But the flip side of that is there's an economic conversation to happen. If I have to go to work, I have to do these things so that we can provide. How do you get that balance? Because so often it appears that the ones who are providing and unable to be present, can they also be good parents?
Well, there are constants and variables in life. Raising children is a constant. Work is a variable. A variable from the point of view that I'm not a slave to my career. I can change it. If my career is making my home dysfunctional, I don't change the home, I change the career, because home for me is a constant. The trouble we have is that career has become the constant and home the variable. And who's really raising these children? They're being raised by passerbys. What do I mean by that? They're being raised by house helps who are there for 3 months and they are gone, and another one for 3 months and they are gone. So passerbys are raising this child. Now, my sister there mentioned about the need of presence. There is no substitute for that. However, presence alone won't do it. Prof mentioned about the different backgrounds we have come from, and we are a product of that background. However, our future need not be determined by that background, because at any point you can get education in what you're doing that changes your perspective about how you were raised, the kind of person you became, and now you're looking at these children, you're thinking, I don't want them to become what I became. So your future need not be determined by the background, because you can make changes in the present. And so how do you assess success? I believe success is assessed relationally. There are many wealthy people who don't get along with their children, they are not successful. There are some people who are not as wealthy, but they have loving relationships in the home. I would call that successful. And so the combination of presence, dealing, understanding how you were raised, the person you became, interrogating that. So many of us embrace how we were raised, but you've never really had a chance to process it. When we process it, sometimes we are afraid to even talk about it because we don't want to be critical of our parents. Now, we have to be gracious to our parents, but we have to identify the gaps in our lives as a result of being misparented. And then we have to work hard to fill in those gaps so that we don't pass on the baton of dysfunction to the next generation. Now, these batons,
please.
You see, children are learning even when parents are not teaching. The fact that you are there with them, they are learning. So you have to be very careful what you're passing on. It's like running a race and passing on a baton. And many of the life batons are passed on without even realizing you've passed them on. Let me mention one more thing. We have this narrative, when you're an adult, you can do it. When you're grown up, you can do it. So we are setting up our children for failure because they have seen the rules in the home and they're thinking, these apply for children. When I become an adult, I can break all the rules because all the adults I know, including mom and dad, break all the rules. And so your kid goes to university at age 18, they're an adult. They have now been licensed by you without even realizing it to break all the rules. They come back home and you call them rebellious, but in fact, you set them up for that. So we need to interrogate that and not just accept what society has packaged for us.
So I want to ask a straight question for a minute before we move on. There's two things that are constant here, all right? Parenting is constant. Making money is also constant.
Yes. But if I ask this audience here, when you are 98 years old looking back, what do you want to see? They will all tell you.
Shall we ask them?
Ask them. Ask them. When you are 98 years old
There's
looking
two
back,
people, yes.
what do you want to see?
Do you want to see money? No, who does not see money when they're 90? Okay, I flipped the question, sorry. But
Yes, yes.
yes.
When you are
yes.
98 years old and you're looking back on life, what do you want to see?
Anyone? Quick answer. Then anyone who's not spoken? Many grandchildren? Yes. Who else? Many grandchildren.
Yes, many grandchildren and successful ones.
What is successful ones? Everyone says success. What is successful ones? They have money, right?
No.
Next. Yes.
He just spoke into what success is. It doesn't mean having money only.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what you believe. All right. Yes.
Apparently, perspectives change. I would like to see money. Apparently, the older you get, you tend to see things differently. And with older people that I've met and interacted with, they're always concerned about how independent or how well their kids are doing. They're not talking about money. They're just concerned that I'm worried if this person will be able to maintain a life when I'm not there.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. here, before the microphone moves first. Yes. Yeah, sure, go.
I just wanted to add on top of money. For me, I see money is also very crucial.
It's crucial.
Very important.
Okay.
For example, when you are bringing up a child,
Yeah.
when you lack some items to bring up this child, you feel like a failed parent. But when money is inclusive and you are also there for the child, you feel like somehow you are a complete parent.
Yeah.
Me, I will not exclude money.
Yeah. All right. Yes, Dr. here. No, we're just taking the poll. Dr.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think
And the microphone.
I want
Yes.
to leverage on the. Sorry, I want to leverage on the point of my dear sister here about our GDPs. I think we've come from scarcity parent backgrounds, yeah? Okay, at least I did. Such that the basics of life are a struggle to have. I think if we were in a society where education is affordable or free, healthcare is affordable, what
The difference.
but because we're
Right.
coming from a place where we have to struggle to just get a decent life, then that push really defines how we parent.
Okay. Some two more. Yes, this microphone. Yeah.
So I just want to add that parenting is lifelong. Lifelong cannot be 98. Of course, we live in a world that is so dynamic, and at the end of the day, we don't know when we're going to exit. So I shouldn't be able to plan my parenting based on I'm going to live to 90-year-old. But as I'm young enough.
Your current.
In my current age, I want to be there for my children. I want to be there in such a way that I'm the first person they call when they're going through a tough time, because they know mom will be there, dad will be there, irrespective of how old they are. So I don't think I'll ever be old enough not to need my mom. My dad is deceased. So I don't think I'll be old enough to say that I'm now 60 and I don't need my mother. No. So I think parenting should be geared in such a way that in the different stages of my child growing up, I need to be there. I need to make an impact. I need to raise them to think in such a way that as a Christian, you're told, what will Jesus do? But as a child, I want my child to think, what will mom do? What will dad do? If dad was here, what will they say? So in an event you exit when you're 40 or when you're 20 or 30 years after parenting, your child will still be able to say, mom is not here, dad is not here. But if they were here, this is what dad would want me to do.
Okay. It's very clear, but didn't answer my question. Yes.
Okay. For me, money is a constant. Of course, we come from an economy of scarcity, but I would want to be, when I'm 98, by the grace of God, I would want my children to actually know that. I want my children to, I would want to know that I have raised responsible children that have got integrity and accountability, regardless of whatever that is brought on their table. Yeah. Reason being, if my children are responsible and have been intentional in my parenting, then I have done a good job for the next 3 to 4 generations.
That sounds like a good place to stop it so that I can come back here. So I'll come back, but let me just come back to you. Yes.
It revolves around functional relationships in the end. Money is a factor, but you've heard it. I want my children, I want my grandchildren. Functional relationships are a constant. Mm-hmm. However, when you're 30, looking up, few people, if you ask them, what are your goals for the next 10 years? People talk about education, they talk about possession, they talk about investment. Rarely will they talk about their children. So here's the reality. What you invest in going towards 90 is what you'll see looking back from 90.
Please, a better hand clap, please. Stella, do you suppose these constants that you're dealing with, as we come to the realization that we have to have, we live in a society that demands certain things, we need to have resources so that we can parent, but also we need to be there and present and striking this balance?
Yes, unfortunately, we have to do both, but I think we can find ways of doing it. And what are some of the small things that we can do? For example, I always drop my children to school every morning, and my husband picks them up. We've been very intentional on not putting them on school transport. We've also been very intentional in not putting them in boarding schools so that we see them every day. Well, they're teenagers at the moment. I think maybe they're better off in a boarding school because I don't have to deal with their everyday issues. But again, I'm happy that...
Yeah? I might have to consider that.
Yeah. Yes, but I'm happy that I'm dealing with these issues, which help me to understand my children. And if it means giving up on a promotion or not being in a very well-paying job, I think when I'm at 98 or 100, it will be well worth giving up on that.
Sacrifice is important.
Sacrifice is very, very important.
Okay.
And also the way we bring them, the young ladies, it's not the realization that I need to bring them today at 13, 14 as an adult. So to give them freedom in some of the things. I can tell them what to do, but at the same time, I have to allow them to do some of the things they want to do, make the mistakes they make, because that's the best way they are going to learn.
Wow, Prof, and it needs to come because we need to shift the discussion on the fact that we live in a society that is broken fast, okay? So before the families get broken, the society is broken fast. Things you spoke about, that we are unable to have a vision of a country. Our education system keeps changing based on who gets into office. And all of a sudden they become these people who know so much and lecture us about the education system. Talk to us about just how to live in a dysfunctional society and try to be functional when people genuinely have to go out and make money. They have to have careers. If you not have money in this society today, you're unable to live.
That's absolutely true. And I wanted to point out, sadly, my brother was right when he said, he gave a percentage of families here that are broken. But then I would dig deeper and say, we are speaking from a position of extreme privilege in this room, because we are assuming that every single individual in this country has freedom to choose. The vast majority of the citizens of this country live in what can be considered under the poverty line. In other words, they're not able to afford a wholesome meal every day for themselves and for their families. But we are constructing social norms based on a society with the GDP of Sweden. So that's a conversation we are not having. So in this room, we can have that conversation because our GDP per capita in this room might be that of Sweden. And so we have the luxury of discussing a system like Sweden. However, This is not relatable to the vast majority of the citizens of this republic. It is absolutely not relatable. The citizens of this republic are scraping the bottom of the barrel to earn a living. And they get children. And I will remind you again that indeed, not everybody who gets children intends to have children. Not everybody thinks about it and plans and says, when I'm 25, I'll get my firstborn, when I'm 30. Even in this room, I can tell you. But more so for societies, for communities in this country that are living below the poverty line. They have children. They have to feed them. They are struggling. And every day they are going to industrial area. And they have to be there by 5:30 a.m. in order to get that Mujengo job. Otherwise, they will go home empty-handed. And they have to work till evening and wait until the supervisor gives them the 100 bob or 300 bob for the day to go and buy kadogo, to go and feed their 5 children. And here we are with a conversation about parenting, where we are saying, you need to be present where? Your story yako ya mjengo, you can find another job. Yo mama fua unafanyanga kila siku, you can find another job where wacha bana. Yo mama mboga of yours where you are sitting in Gikomba tangu 4 a.m. till 8 p.m. You're not seeing your daughter growing up, you can find an alternative. So we have to think a little bit more deeply about this rather than the interesting and lofty but superficial conversation that we have about parenting. So that's the first thing I wanted to get out of the way. The second thing I wanted to get out of the way is that parenting, you can't use one strategy of parenting from infancy to 89. Okay? Everybody at those stages, from a psychological perspective, there are stages of life where you have to deal with certain demands on you biologically, psychologically, and socially. And during each of those stages, you need a different kind of parenting. At each of those stages, because your brain is functioning differently at each of those stages, you need a different kind of parenting. And a parent needs to know this, that when I have the toddler, the parenting I will give this child is different from when they become terrible 2s, and then they turn 3, and then they turn into an argumentative 6, and then they turn into a rebellious 14, and then they turn into this calm 21-year-old who seems to have everything fixed, and then they turn into this 30-year-old who doesn't know what's happening to their relationship. At each of those stages, they need a different kind of parenting. And if you do not adapt your parenting to the adapting stages of your child, you'll get stuck at some point, you become part of history, and you become irrelevant in the life of this child. So that is how I look at it, that you cannot say, I am this parent who I tell them what to do and they must do it. They will turn 25 and they will have more muscles than you, and they will have a deeper voice than you, and you can't tell me anything, all right? So you have to adapt the parenting as you go along so that then it is effective. Thank you.
All right. Very good points. I want to come to Tatiana, who's, showing us how to do it with the different times and that sort of thing. Just from, again, a lived experience before I come back to the audience. What is it that you find from this conversation that resonates with what's happening with you, what people are telling you, because you interact with people all the time and they follow and they're like, yeah, this is good or not. What do you find is the thing that resonates very well with parenting, the thing that you think society misses as well, that people are maybe vicariously living their lives through you as, and like, I'd love to do that, but maybe I can't because you have so much time. You say, you are there, you're present. I'd love to do that, but maybe I can't.
I don't think it's necessarily to do with time, but I think it's the way in which I raise my kids. Like a lot of the time, one of the biggest comments that I get is, I can't believe you're letting them get dirty. Who's going to wash those clothes? Like seeing my kids playing in the garden in mud is, I think, one of the most controversial things that I post for some reason for the parents following me. So I think it's that aspect of the way in which we raise our kids in Kenya. It's like, you must sit still, be quiet, behave. Otherwise, you're seen as like a naughty child. You can't go and get your, we wear our Sunday best quite often. You can't go and get that Sunday best dirty. Right. So I think one of the things that we're lacking is we don't allow our kids to be kids. And I think that's one of the biggest comments that I get on my social media. I really wish I could do that, but for some reason we can't. So I think that's, for me, one of the biggest things I've seen.
Do we have teens in the room? Do we have teens? Because we were speaking, yes, brilliant. Please give her the microphone. We've missed quite a bit of parenting, for sure, as you can see here. But I want to hear your thoughts about what you think from your perspective as a teenager that the old folks here, especially the professor with white hair, is missing. Be honest, there's nothing he will do, I promise you.
I think I agree with Tatiana's point that many of the older parents, even mine included, don't allow kids to be kids. At times you're trying to control everything, and sometimes you give that. I was given advice, but I think the best lessons I've ever learned are through experience. So just allow the things to happen. If they're not gonna die, they're not gonna land in hospital. It's not a legal issue. Just allow it.
Okay, this is very good life advice. Number one, yes, another. Okay,
No,
please.
I'm not a teenager.
All right.
But
But you can pass for one. Please go ahead. Gen Z.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, say some things.
Okay, something else that they have missed is emotional stability as a parent. So many young people have been raised by very angry parents. They have taken out their marital conflicts, work stress, financial instability, and they make children look like a burden. And that's very stressful to children. They grow up knowing that they're burden, they're not enough, and they're growing up to be very stressed people. And I think that's one thing we should work on as parents. I'm not a parent yet, but I want my kids to be, even when I punish them, they don't see it as a burden. They don't see themselves as a burden. Thank you.
Okay.
Can we, to even add on to that, I think
for sure.
taking the kids' emotional well-being also into account, because I think very often we really don't take their emotions. Yeah.
We don't think they're emotional beings.
Exactly, we don't. Yeah. They're just supposed to do what, I personally, from experience, my kids went through a really hard time at one point, and I took them out to homeschool because it was the best thing for their mental state. And now, if you see them now compared to last year, they're doing so much better. So I think it's really important for you to listen to your kids, see what they're, if they're not doing well, then really take that into account.
All right. I'm still picking views of young people.
Yeah, hello. My name is Collins. I have a point that I want the panelists to expound on, and mine is on the issue of growing up. I've been watching movies, I've seen TikTok videos. I'm comparing the lifestyle from other countries, how the children are being raised, and how I was raised. My question is, those children are so independent, but at the same time, we need to offer guidance to the kids. So how is there a way we can create balance between offering this guidance and allowing them to think independently? Because remember, they are not empty vessels at the end of the day.
Can I ask you the same question? How would you have loved that to happen to you?
I used to ignore a lot of advice because I wanted to think on my own. So I was like, sasa mzaya ananiambia aje, amezeeka but retire pole pole, you see. But at the same time, I think now I needed that guidance. But just striking a balance between the two.
Yeah.
Allowing them to think independently and at the same time offering the guidance.
But what advice would have you taken? What would have made you take the advice? What do you think?
At some point, I think they were wrong.
They were wrong.
Yeah, at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Anyone else?
Also the delivery, right?
Okay.
The way in which, like, Kenyan society, sometimes we deliver guidance in quite a tough way. In quite a violent way. I wanted to say that, but in quite a violent way. For example, like my dad never hit me, yet there was one day, I remember to this day, I don't know if you remember that. I snuck out of the house, okay? Or actually, I don't know, I did something like in terms of going out. I was a teenager and he picked me up and I just remember he just went, "I'm really disappointed in you." And that has hurt me more than anything any parent or any teacher has done to me, just because we had such a great relationship and he offered guidance in a a very conversational way. He allowed me to be myself while still offering that guidance. So just those words were enough for me to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to reel that back in. I'm going to change this behavior. I didn't need to be beaten, or like, I didn't need to be, it didn't need to be submissive.
Okay. So there's one thing, Prof, as you came to it, this, that we are skirting around it. Does beating works? And all these people are thinking about it, but they're not on to say it because...
I will say it.
Yes.
And I will say it as I always have said. Discipline is derived from the Latin word meaning to teach. It's to teach, right? To instruct, to show the way. In this country, discipline means work somebody on the bottom or beat them up, cause pain, inflict pain, until A, that person does what you want them to do, or they stop doing what you don't want them to do. That is what discipline means in this country. And I'll tell you why. It's because we are propagating the values of the colonialists who taught our great-grandfathers that the African, you cannot learn without pain being inflicted. That is what your grandfathers were taught. And when they became teachers, and I'm not saying Mr. Mugalizi has imbibed the same, when they became teachers, they did not know any better. And when they were teaching us about parenting, they did not know any better. But we now know better. We know that inflicting pain does not change behavior sustainably. We know that if I am stronger than you and I prohibit you from doing something, and when you try it, I cause pain, you might not do it when I'm there. But when I am not there, you will do it 100 times and thump your chest and say, I am the one who is there now. That is what beating people and causing pain causes. And the second thing is, it only works for as long as you're bigger, more powerful, and have more weapons than me. But the day I will be bigger, more powerful, and I have more weapons than you, how will you teach me if this was your only method of teaching? And therefore, violence begets violence. When we raise our children with pain and violence, we should not be surprised that today we live in a society that thinks pain and violence are a solution to disagreement. If I fight against you, James, for any position, and you acquire a whole constituency of followers, and I acquire a whole constituency of followers, and we are going head to head, those followers are likely to fight each other at some point. Why? Because when we stand on this podium, we will be throwing barbs. We will be shelling each other. We'll be firing at each other. We'll be using violent metaphors because that is the only way we know to cause another person to accept our point of view. Because that is how our parents were taught and our grandparents. And I finish by saying, we keep saying this is how Africans used to do things. It's the most insulting thing I've ever heard. It's the most insulting thing I've ever heard when people say inflicting pain was how Africans taught their children. All the stories I have read about Africans teaching their children the skills that were there then were about apprenticeship. It was about a small child following their father or grandfather around and looking at the things this person does and trying to do them on a smaller scale until they master them, and then they're allowed to do the next skill and the next skill. Their grandfather did not come to them and tell them, I want to teach you how to do iron smithing. You are doing it wrongly. You are doing it wrongly. He never did that. It was the other way around. It was, come with me, I'm going to work. And sit there, you do your thing as he does his thing. And he does his thing so well. This kid, but how did you do that? Oh, this is how I do it. And after 10 years of following him around, the young man starts doing the same thing. The same with farming, the same with taking care of our animals, the same with the economy that was then. This infliction of violence is a new thing on this continent. We only inflicted violence in very organized ways, the same way we inflict today. When we get young men, usually it is young men who we think are dispensable, we give them bows and arrows and spears and tell them, go kill the people in the other community because we want their cows. Why do we do that? Those are not people. We are people. The property they have is ours. you make a justification for it. So this violence in the home is a strange phenomenon, and I get so worried when we justify it as the only way of shaping people's behavior. And I ask, if my wife, we disagree, and I say, you know, we don't have money to buy that car you want. Then I go to work and I come back and she has bought the car with our joint savings. Should I get a kiboko and beat her up? I ask people who think this is a solution, should I take a pimbo and thrash her? You know, people will say, no, but she's an adult. So why is a child more able to respond to this kiboko than an adult whom you can reason? So I think I get a lot of, I speak a lot about this because it is something that I think has affected how our society has developed, and we have an opportunity to change it. We have an opportunity to change it and do things differently. That when I am president and Gen Z come and say you are wrong, I don't abduct them and kill them. I sit down with them. Because violence is not my nature, I will sit down with them and say, oh, you think I'm wrong. What should I do differently? Or reason with them. And we can even disagree without thinking that violence is part of the equation. Thank you.
All right.
James?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to add something to that. Prof is right, but let me just read for us Oxford Dictionary definition of discipline. The practice of training, what Prof talked about, to obey rules or a code of behavior. But there is a portion of the definition that you can push back on because of our experience. And this is the portion of the definition: using punishment to correct disobedience. That's Oxford. Now, what Prof is talking about is absolutely true, that violence is never acceptable. But let me take you on a journey to change your mind a little bit, not on the violence, but to—
I was getting worried a bit.
No.
Yes. Anyway, go ahead.
Think of a surgeon, and you are teaching hospital. We've got surgeons here. A woman is giving birth. She's pushed all she can. She must go in for surgery. The surgeon has been trained to use a scalpel blade to save life. They have been trained. And when they cut that woman up, she will bleed. They are not shocked. They have been trained to know what to do when they bleed. So the scalpel blade in the hands of a trained surgeon is an instrument that saves life. The same scalpel blade in the hand of a murderer is an instrument of death. Is the scalpel blade the issue? No, it's the user. Knives are used to kill people every single day, but every home has more than one knife. Are the knives the issue? No, it's the user. Therefore, we must train people. We must train people. You know, the violence Prof is talking about is real, and that's why I mentioned that 80% of our Kenyan homes are dysfunctional. They are full of angry parents. We run a class called Processing Anger because we meet them wherever we go. So there is a corrective measure. There is a punishment that is meted out in every training. Schools, what do schools do when a child is not getting their scores? Whatever they do is designed to bring them back to the line. And so if you remove violence out of the picture, still think of this. Think about the lion. What does a lion do? A lion kills its prey with its jaws, its mouth. But a lion carries its young with the same mouth. It knows how to gingerly hold the young, but it also knows how to crush the neck of a buffalo. And that's part of what we teach. We teach people to process their background. Where have you come from? And when they process that and realize, man, I came from a very violent background, we're telling, okay, we're going to change that. We're going to raise our children without violence, but not every lion's bite kills. Because lions carry their young with their mouth.
Right. I need to come to the audience. You've been listening a lot and been dropping a lot of important phrases. On this final question, because I think we have less than 30 minutes to go home. What is this key ingredients that we finally agree? So we need to agree on certain things, all right, to move the conversation forward, that parenting then should be. All right. We've unlearned and things to need to unlearn, violence and those things, and pushing for all manner of successes that, are not. What do we feel is this version of parenting that we need to adopt based on our social economic conditions, granted, not the one in Nordic countries, all right? Please, you wanna have your first go? Yeah, make it brief so that I can get many, yeah.
Thank you very much. I want to first of all point on the availability, that availability sometimes may not contribute to a good parenting. There are some people who are available, but they're ever violent with their spouses. Then your absence is more constructive than you being available. Okay. So it is dependent. Number two, sometimes we don't decide when to be available. Remember, going to Haiti by the policeman, he has nothing to say. He has to go. A watchman left from Kakamega to come here to make a living. He has no choice but to go home maybe once after 3 months.
Right.
So in my opinion, there's something that has not been mentioned, is that wherever I am, whether I'm present or absent, is to give an assurance to that kid that he means or she means everything in my whole world. That if it means I'm going to drop everything, whatever I'm doing, to be at his or her need, I'll be there. That one by itself, it will make me, if I'm a policeman, I'm in Haiti, my kid is happy and proud of me as a parent. That assurance. And if I can point out at my level, I remember I used to believe, my mom used to be there constantly, but at some point I used to feel she does not like me at all. So I had written her off. She's there physically, but I'm totally absent. Until one day, when she came to school and I improved just a little bit, and she called me and gave me 5 shillings to go home with a matatu. It was a breakthrough. I felt I'm most valued person. My confidence went up from somebody who doesn't speak to person who even go to church and sing alone. My performance in school went high to a level that I was being compared in the zone of the guy who used to be almost last. That moment of realization that no, I was being so wrong. My mom had not communicated to me that I am important to her. So when that was communicated, I never needed the presence of my mom. I knew wherever she is, I am
How
most important.
how is that communicated? For the 5 shillings?
The 5 shillings that I recognized your improvement.
Okay.
And that evening she came and called me out under the moon. And she told me, whatever you need to continue improving, even if we shall not eat food with salt, but I'll be giving you 10 shillings every Sunday to buy a paraffin for you to study with. That made me compete to a level at the kindergarten level, zonal level, the guy who used to be last. That realization that I'm important. I never needed their presence. I knew I was important to them.
Fantastic. I almost feel like we should stop with your story, but anyway, there are many stories. Please, thank you for sharing. Really, really appreciate sharing that. Yes. Where's the microphone? Please. Please, you can share your stories. Dr. here.
So I'll share as on 2 fronts. So I'm a mom to 4. I have a 17-year-old boy and triplet girls who are turning 15. One is to say there are 3 babies, there are 3 different individuals. So parenting style, even with the individual child, needs to be very different. Number 2, I need to take time off, and I have prioritized my self-care. And they know Fridays, like if this thing were tomorrow, I wouldn't have shown up. Fridays is mom's time out, and they know that I have to be whole for me to parent them, wholly. I have learned to forgive myself, because I think there's so much that we can be, that can be pointed. The gaps can be quite a number, and sometimes you can doubt yourself, doubt your parenting. I realize everyone is just, as you say, there's no manual. Everyone is just winging it.
Just
Even with the Pastor Mukolwe's guidebook that we went through, which really helped, it won't prepare you for certain situations that life throws at you or throws at you guys as a family. So forgive yourself and don't judge yourself too harshly if there's one or two things that you don't get right. Now, the other one that I'd like to share is on my, I run a business that's a domestic placement agency. And I'll tell you guys, our children are being parented by Niger TV, they're being parented by domestic workers. It is a crisis. Yeah. There's the thing about quality time rather than quantity, and I like the experience that the guy has mentioned. You may just need a few minutes of the week to have that quality time. So for me, I don't push for quantity. It's more for quality. That one time that I managed to drop them, maybe it's once a week. I may not do it every day, but that one day I will make it count. So it's something that we are seeing, especially with the younger generations, they're what, Gen?
Gen Alpha.
No, the ones who are parents now. No, Gen Z are
Millennials.
giving birth already.
Millennials.
The millennials, yeah? Sorry, I'm a Gen X. So the millennials, because there's so much, their lifestyles are very different. And we had a scenario where we had to pull out one of our domestic workers because the mother at 1 month after giving birth was back to partying. So we are seeing a very different trend in parenting. And I think these conversations are quite important that we bring to light that the kind of generation we are raising are very different. But what I like about the generation we are raising, Gen X's and Gen Z's and A's, is that they stand up for themselves. I think for some of us who are silenced into adulthood, and we found our voices after getting out into independence. So I like that they're able to voice, they know their rights, and they will tell you. The schools are doing a very good job in that. And it's important that we've had to adjust to, a child saying, but like my children will say, but that's your thing. That's not our thing, Yeah, so it's a plus to see that happening. I'm very proud of the generation that's coming up.
Great. So I want to bring the final point on the parenting, who's parenting children here, is YouTube and technology, all right? And as you make this point, I want to come back to that, please.
Okay, just wanted to echo what Prof said on the violence on the children, which does not really help. I've done it practically on my own son, not somebody's child. This is a boy who would not respect his own mother on several occasions. So I decided, let be the Okonko in the house. So I really smacked him nicely. He cried until he couldn't cry anymore. A day by that time he was about 11 years old. So we sat down after 2 days and we had a negotiation. And I confessed that I'll never beat you up again. So every time we would set targets, agree that you are moving to this level. I expect you to have 1, 2, 3, just bare minimum. And every time you would achieve it, there is a reward. And believe you me, that has helped me to know how to manage teenagers throughout. And this is why I love the teaching. Because this young man, every time I give him targets, he always strives to meet. And we only talk. So this means building that parental relationship, it's very important. We need to desist from being parents who behave like a landing helicopter. A helicopter, when it lands, makes a lot of noise. And every time there is noise around, people run away. So when you nurture that relationship, you are going to have, even these children being able to pick up the independence, as Tatiana said, and they are able to move on with their life without any challenge. You'll never have that problem that I don't know what my child is doing. You are always comfortable that they are okay where they are. Now, this young guy is now in the second year of university, and we are still having that father-son relationship. And this is what we have to do as parents. Nurture the relationship, give them the independence, support them, mentor them, and let them choose their own pathways.
All right. Yes, there's a gentleman behind you first, and then, let the microphone go to, yes.
All right. My name is Major Minor. I think one of the things I'm loving even from the conversation is that we are seeing a change, and I think even to answer the question on what are some of the things that we can agree on. First of all, I'm not a parent myself, but I think I have been in the community at least to be able to observe. Yeah, and I think one of those things that I feel is very crucial is allowing children to have the space to express their emotions. However they come at you, it might be emotions that you don't like to see them express. But I find that especially Gen Zs, millennials, as we go in, especially around that, someone also mentioned there are people who have been silenced to silenced to behave. Yeah. So even on points that you should speak for yourself, you are afraid of the confrontation so much that you just choose to always sacrifice yourself. And I think that is not a success for a parent, that your child cannot speak for themselves. And the other thing, I think it will be also nice, and I think we're also learning, even as we are getting to that point of parents, is parents being able to say sorry. Yes, because for many of them, they were the alpha and the omega. Yes, you are wrong. Even in that situation when I was wrong, why did you allow me to do the wrong? So even just seeing parents being able to own up and say, by the year I went, I'm sorry about this. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. And also, I know Dr. Mukolwe has talked about this. I don't know whether it's me who is struggling with it. There's the violence bit in Aguziwa Kidogo. There's also they talk to them. But I think people are growing in stages. Is there, I don't know, is there like a template between this stage to this age, this works, or that's a question. If there is no template, well, we're in for a good time. Thank you.
Okay, yes, please.
I just want to say two things here. Parenting is not a given. It's acquired, and you learn on the job. And the way we give our 100% to our professions, we've got to give 100% to our parenting. I cannot be very, very successful in my job, yet I have nothing. Raise my commitment to my parenting. My parenting comes before my job. And if I picked up a balance, I would be very, very successful. So one of the things I have to say here is listen to your children. Be there, listen to them. Indulge on them within conversations. And I like the way Prof said, as they grow with them. But don't be there already to say, I am the boss and you have to grow like me. But grow with your children and you will see the transitions very, very simply and very easily. And all of a sudden, it'll be fun parenting. So take it as a fun thing rather than a problem, because it's yours. Nobody's going to solve it. So if you take it as your own problem and you know, where am I going wrong? It's not the child with the problem, it's my parenting style. So as a parent, I can say to you is no child is born with a problem. It is our parenting with a problem. So look into yourselves and see, what am I doing wrong that is actually showing me my results? And that's in a normal scenario as well, at your workplace. What you don't do right shows you, and you get it at the end of the year, your appraisals. It's showing you on a daily basis. Correct the mistakes we do, but there's no harm in making mistakes, but you learn from them. Thank you.
Can I also add to her point?
Yes.
I think also understanding kids' brain development is really important. So, for example, a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum in a supermarket is not a naughty child. that is just literally where that's how their brain is developing, and they just don't have any other way to express themselves. And I think often in our society, we don't really understand brain development, so we think our kids are naughty when they're not being naughty. 0 to 6, a child has no impulse control, so they will be doing things just on the whim, just because they actually have not developed impulse control. But now you're thinking this child is being naughty. So I think as a parent, it's also our responsibility to learn about kids and how their brain develops, which will actually, help us understand their behavior at every stage.
Okay.
Uh,
Yes.
I think we have concentrated on a single approach to parenting. What Professor talked about, that we are talking from a very high GDP income level, but we have this low level. I think we have to look at parenting as a communal responsibility. I have to be responsible for my community and how they are raising up children. Can I step in a situation where I see a child needs support? I have had a relative who was raising up girls, but at one stage, no, boys. A mother raising up boys, there were 3, and she needed help. That is now when somebody else needed to come in to reason with these boys. So I would think parenting basically should evolve beyond me, the father and the mother, to us, the community. What do we want our children to be like? And I think that's where, of course, standards are set in the government and all that kind of thing. But that should not be the thing. We have gatekeepers in our various community family setups and all that kind of thing. I think we who have a vision of what parenting is need to evolve ourselves and step out to support a father who himself was not fathered and now has a child to father. So really, we have parents who need themselves to be parented so that they can parent. And that is where a gatekeeper really is needed. Yeah.
All right, let's go to the final point, the role of technology in raising children as it is. YouTube School is brilliant from literally month 0.
But it has a lot of positives.
Okay, yes, we're coming to it.
Go ahead.
I mean, not obviously a child should not be on a screen 24/7 watching rubbish TV. There is times for that though. I mean, let them have half an hour, whatever it is on a Sunday. But I mean, there's also a lot of educational games. YouTube also is a free university. I mean, you can learn music off YouTube. I mean, there's so many positives. So I think using it in a positive way is very important.
How do you use it in a positive way? I think that was a
I
question.
have a lot of educational games. So my kids actually learned how to read on an app called Reading Eggs. So it teaches them how to read, but then it's in a fun, interactive way. So I mean, not everything online is bad. For example, my daughter Olive, my dad just bought her piano. Her lessons are coming off of YouTube. So it's not that everything that they're watching is bad. Of course, you have to know what your kids are watching. You can't just let them watch senselessly. But there are some really interesting educational things that are fun for the kids to be able to grow and learn. So not everything's bad, yeah.
I will pick it up from Tatiana. And I would say, even in the academy, in among pediatricians and child psychologists and so on, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, they issued all sorts of advisories about the damage gadgets can cause on children's growing brains. And they gave guidelines of how long you should allow it and so on and so forth. And we have continued keeping those guidelines to some extent. But I come from a different perspective. Those who wrote those guidelines grew up in a world without gadgets. Truthfully speaking, they had no clue what damage gadgets would have on their children's brains. They were basically just winging it. They were imagining things and saying, human interaction is important. We have grown up in an environment where we have to sit together in the same room and see people and shake hands and hug and so on. So these gadgets are removing people from the ability to do that. Therefore, they are bad. And that was the judgment, and that was it, and full stop, and no argument, and finished. So gadgets were banned for children of a certain age. And then after a certain age, you restrict how much they use them. And then suddenly when they're 18, they can use gadgets the whole day and the whole night, and they go to Stella for jobs and they're on their gadgets and so on and so forth. What would have been a more adaptive approach, in my view, would be to recognize that these gadgets are entering the world in which we live. And they're going to be ubiquitous in the world these children will be growing up in. How do we ensure that they interact with those gadgets in a way that is safe and that accords with our values? Once you reach that space, it becomes the same thing as a playground where they play football, where we used to play kati and all sorts of things. It becomes one other playground where they can play those games and newer games that we have no clue about. It becomes a new way of engaging and connecting with other humans. In fact, more humans than we could connect with, because they can reach more people using those gadgets. But we have to recognize every time new technology shows up, we have to recognize that this 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old is going to be an adult in a world where these things will be everywhere. And so if you don't prepare them for a world where those things are everywhere, they will be maladaptive. They will become adults and suddenly everybody has gadgets, everybody's working through those gadgets, everybody is required to have those in school or at work, and I don't know how to use it because it wasn't there in my home, it was banned. So this is what we have to really think about. It's traditional. Every generation that comes after this one is bad behaviorally. My generation was terrible to my parents. My parents were terrible to their parents and so on, all the way to the early first millennium where somebody wrote on a tablet in Mesopotamia that the world has become so terrible that everybody thinks they can be a writer and everybody is trying to become a philosopher. They were writing about the next generation 4,000 years ago. So we have to take cognizance of this as we take care of our children, as we worry about gadgets, as we worry about new things that are entering society. Just imagine that I'm preparing this child to live in a world where everybody will have those things. How can they use those things safely and adaptively and continue to be successful in line with the values that I have taught them? Thank you.
Okay. Stella, you go. How do you allow gadgets and internet in this new parenthood? How does that look like for you?
I started off very strict. I didn't have internet in my house. And then COVID happened. COVID happened, schools came home. And internet was a requirement, gadgets for each child was a requirement. And I still had a bit of rules around that. Before you sleep, you need to bring your phone by my bedside. You need to bring your computer. And then I realized, what am I doing? Why don't I empower them to know good and bad, to understand and only choose what they want to choose, but there are consequences for your choices. And these days I'm amazed when someone produces a certificate from Yale University where they went to school and I haven't paid for it, but they have been proactive and decided to study certain things that they wanted. Some of them, when they don't understand some of the content that they've been taught in school, they come and look for an Indian who will teach it better than their own teacher taught. So it's a question of just giving knowledge to my children and allowing them to be.
Okay, Stanley, how does that look like in the new parents that you're teaching?
It looks good.
Right.
The gadget is neutral, but the content coming through is not. You can live in a gated community, but the entire world is your neighbor in that gadget. Therefore, proper use of the gadget must be taught. Because there are people out there who are designing ways of destroying others and comes through this very same internet. So safe use of the internet is mandatory.
Okay. Do I have thoughts on this specific question? Yes, Olimu here.
Yes, early years again. The gadget is good, but it also has to be monitored. Case scenario, I love giving case scenarios. A child comes, we teach children from the age of 2.5 to 5.5. A child comes with very good speech, a lot of pre-knowledge, and you ask the parent and they say from the gadgets. So you can know it's controlled. There's some educational programs that the child is engaging with. And another one comes, same gadgets. They cannot listen. They have no speech because what they are watching is not controlled. Okay, so the gadget does not engage the child. Probably they're watching the Nigers or something else, but it's not engaging the child. So the child has no speech, no response. Now this child comes to Bolo, whose tone is this tone, but they're used to the gadget with a musical intonation. Now that child takes a long time to be able to learn from me because they're not used to this flat voice. I don't have that musical intonation. Another child comes, same gadget. They're used to gadgets that interact with them, but they acquire the musical intonation even in speech. And I'm sure you've met some of those children. And when they're talking to you, they don't engage you in conversations. They repeat what you say because in the gadgets, this is red. Can you all say red? And the child says red. They don't say red. Okay? So when they are talking to you, what's your name? My name is Simon. The musical intonation is there. So the gadget is good, but you must control it. In early years, we see it from the very first day they come. We can tell the children who are on gadgets and it's monitored and the children are learning. They have a lot of pre-knowledge, good command of speech. They listen, they respond. They listen, think, respond from 2.5. But they are the ones who will not speak because they watch. The gadget does not engage them. So the gadget is good. However, alamas za dukuduku.
Okay. Anyone else with the gadget problem?
Yeah, I think you see a lot of that. If you go to YouTube, even for children, there are all sorts of things, and you need to be able to control what they have access, and it has to be age appropriate. And you look at the content and say, this is what I want my kid to be looking at and learning. So even if it is that sing-song, American accent, whatever, and you decide this is what I want my child to engage with, then that's you making decisions. And obviously there will be repercussions going forward or consequences and so on. So I agree. I mean, the entire point is the initial reaction to these gadgets, and even to TV, by the way, at some point, even to TV, was catastrophic. It was like, this new technology is going to make our kids dumb. And yet, as Mwalimu says, and as we say here, there are kids who have engaged with that technology, and they're learning way more than they would have learned in traditional education system. So there must be something in there that we can extract and make available to these kids using those gadgets and the guidance of the people around them in order to get things done. The key thing is for the people who are teaching them to be aware that they themselves are not ready for the world in which those things are ubiquitous. And so they have to educate themselves, the parents, the teachers, about what is in these things and what is the, how far can this thing go? And then use it in a positive way to achieve the goals that they would like to achieve. But banning it and saying these things are dangerous and risky, you're wasting your time and you're creating a child who will not be adaptive in the world where everybody will be using those guys. Even you go to a restaurant, there's an iPad there, you click, select the food you want and so on. And yet you've been told you can't use those gadgets all your life. So we have to be preparing people for the world in which they're going to live in, not the world in which we lived.
Right. I was just going to mention that part of our challenge is that we don't have the test of time. You see, you can acquire knowledge through gadgets. But you remember, 98 looking back, it's relationships that matter. So even in the use of acquiring knowledge through gadgets, they must never replace the relationships. Because in the end, we are designed to relate with one another.
Is there a chance that the relation has changed, that we can just chat on chat, right? Like we don't have to be in the same space. Is there space for that in the future?
Space for that. However, you'll find that in a home, the default playmate for a child is a parent. The next playmate is a sibling. The next one is a neighboring child. When they are all missing, the gadget becomes the default playmate. And for parents who say, I can't get my child off the gadgets, you ask them, how much time do you play with them? And they scratch their heads. And you tell them, go home and ask your child to play with you, and they put the gadget down. So that relationship, that one-on-one interaction, parents have no time for children. So we must create that. So you can't forbid the gadgets, but must never replace a relationship.
Tatiana, I have something to add here.
I mean, to add to that, I think as a parent, there are days, like I'm a single mom of 3, I told you, Sundays, there are days I just wake up and I'll literally put them to watch a movie because I personally give me 45 minutes to wake up. They wake you up at 6 a.m. So you're just expected on and they want to, they're ready to go. And my kids, like people say boys are really, active. My girls are incredibly active. So, I mean, you wake up and you just need 45 minutes. You mentioned, I think somebody here mentioned if a mom is not happy or the parent is not happy, you have to take care of yourself. She takes every Friday for herself. I take those 45 minutes every Sunday morning for myself while they're on a screen because no one else is taking care of them, So I think, as everyone is saying, there's a time and place for everything. I'm not going to have my kids watching nonsense things all the time, but I have found technology to be very helpful to some of the things that we're doing at home. But of course, I think also, like he said, relationships are very important and balance is key. My kids don't spend 24 hours on the screen. They may spend 2 hours on a Sunday, but then the rest of that time, we're out, we're all together, we're playing in the dirt, we're going to see family. So, a balance is key.
Okay. I'm coming to you because there was some Gen Zs who came, people who grew up with these things, and I wish they have something to say because all of us are not natives of this internet and gadget thing. Is there a microphone? There's some young people that walked in looking at us, or you prefer to chat it? I'll take that as well. Just tweet it or send it on. Yeah. All right. Just something that, let's start with you, please. Yes.
Okay, I would say the gadget, it has an advantage and disadvantage at the same time. I'm not a mother, but I do have my nephew who texted me yesterday. I didn't even know he uses WhatsApp. Personally, in my generation, at his age, I didn't know how to chat. But he was texting me because I posted something without my scarf. And he was telling me, Auntie, what is this? I'm like, it's just nothing, it's just a video. And now I asked him, does your mom know you're using the phone? He's like, yes, because we are being sent homeworks on the phone and so on. But the funny thing is, I like the way he was chatting because the punctuation and all the semicolon, he knew how to place them. And I'm like, this guy is really good because at my age, at that time, I didn't know even how to text. But at the end of it, his mother is a bit busy, but then I'm his auntie. So I just tell him, this is what you are going to do with this, and this is it, and this is it. So I think it's much more of an advantage because we have also a young kid who also speaks like English fluently and so on. And I think I like that about the gadgets. Yeah.
Okay. Give to your colleagues. They have something to say.
My name is Emily. I think that technology is a very incredible thing. Also, I feel like the gadgets are very important, but when you use them strategically, for instance, if the Gen Zs used the platforms strategically, maybe we would have won or something near there.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's about the strategy at the end of the day and balance, I guess. Thank you.
All right, that's fair enough. Yes, please.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Lisa. For the gadget, I'll say it's a very good thing actually. The current technology, it's here and it's giving people to learn quickly. Nowadays, I came across University of YouTube, where every kid from grade 1 to the rest up to university, we use most of our time on YouTube to learn. And also we find positive impacts on how we can maneuver financial markets as Gen Zs, because most of our time we spend is on digital platforms. We do our businesses there. We don't like working. We love easy life as Gen Z actually. Not easy, We are trying to help you, digital marketing, all that stuff. So we can just sit in the house and also you can find us. We just order stuff and this stuff can come to us. We're just waiting for them. So I think technology is a good thing. We just have to have the right parenthood to teach us the right way to use them. So I'm not against it.
All right, brilliant. All right, where you needed the microphone here, please, at the front.
It's actually nothing to do with gadgets, but there's a gentleman, I didn't get your name. Yes, Mugata, Richard. So Richard speaks of something that when we think macro, what Prof was saying, we are also not emphasizing enough. We are all speaking from a privilege point. That hits, it really hits hard. I also consult for an educational NGO, Ngong Road Children's Foundation, and we deal with very underprivileged children, like totally bottom of bottom. And what am I saying? When we think of the international schools, there's usually community service where it is part of the curriculum. Like he was saying, what are some of the policies we'd change and be able to have a bigger impact as a society? I had to leave Rotary to be able to fully give my life to NRCF. Why? Because I felt that's the least I could do as an individual. So if we all maybe just identified a needy child somewhere, a group, an institution where you can volunteer for, you can give back to, we might actually realize a bigger society objective. He says it's totally under, I don't know, we have really underestimated, but I think we should call ourselves, have that introspection in us to have a bigger macro objective realized. Then we might want to also think of that 80% that is not represented here. We might want to think of those orphans. We might want to think of the street family. We might want to think of the students, the boys who do not have children. Before I left TSC, I worked in a public school, a public high school. And most of my students, like he said, most of them were from single parent home, and not single parent, gonna do, single parent, we are struggling. Some of those children were parents, you know? And I felt there was a gap, and I just did a little survey questionnaire for each kid, just trying to really understand the person, where they come from, who they are, what are their aspirations and all that, and which unfortunately wasn't well appreciated. But for me, it made me realize I cannot be in an institution where I am not able to change. So if you can't change the system, then it's you to change. So how do you change? We can give back to the society. Identify boys. If you're a dad, don't look at your boys only. Look for boys you can be able to mentor. As a mother, look for people you can be able to mentor. Give back to society. It will give you a happiness, satisfaction, contentment that you cannot imagine. So, yeah.
All right, great.
Currently, Kenya is pursuing or the world is pursuing what we're calling care reform. Care reform is a situation where we are looking at how are we caring for our children. We have a system in Kenya where people have taken children to orphanages, what we call charitable children institutions. If you study those children who have gone through that system, a number of them are suicidal and all those kind of negativities that come out of them. Because at an age like even 3 years, 2 years, they only have one caregiver over, say, 20 children, one caregiver taking care of them over the years. So we are pursuing that system of care reform, where we are saying that children should be raised up in families and in communities. It gives opportunity to every one of us, either to foster a child, to be a guardian to a child, to adopt a child. The Muslim use what they're saying kafala system. So it is important that when we look at parenting, we don't look at it at the individualistic level. We look at a nation and its children.
Also, we really have to look at sex education, because parenting starts at conception and delivery. So how are we empowering the Gen Zs? We are talking about issues of sex education, because we have a number of abortions around university and the college issues, and the children who are actually, what would we say, abandoned. So those are the thing we're talking about. It's a deeper thing when we look at parenting as parenting. Thank you.
All right. Yes.
You know, as she does this, I agree with the part that you've said towards the end about thinking macro. And I also take note about children, like orphaned children, the push to make sure they are taken care of in families. Unfortunately, the research we conducted a series of studies in Western Kenya out of Uasin Gishu, and went into communities where orphaned children were placed with their family members. And then we compared the health and well-being of those orphaned children with those who were in charitable children's institutions, and compared with the children on the street. And we looked at various parameters of physical health and mental health. And what we found was that on numerous parameters of physical and mental health, the orphaned children who are growing up in charitable children's institutions that were regulated were doing better than orphans who are living with their relatives. And we discovered in some homestays, for instance, young girls being sent out to go at night and come back with money because this family says you are an extra burden to us. So that was the first problem that we identified, and we asked ourselves why. So we looked at families which were getting cash transfers versus those that were not getting cash transfers. And we found that those that were getting cash transfers for taking care of orphans, the orphans had better outcomes than those that were not. So two things emerged from there. And it's not that being in a charitable children's institution automatically gives negative outcomes, or being in a homestead automatically gives negative outcomes. It is the circumstances. So a regulated charitable children's institution, which your office and your colleagues frequently visit and make sure they meet certain standards, those children grow up with a better future outlook, better physical health, better educational outcomes than if they were left with relatives who are unsupported. Now, if you have to keep them with relatives, then again, we have to budget and give them cash transfers to those families so that, and then we also regulate them much the same way as we regulate the charitable children's institution. So somebody visits the home to make sure that this child's well-being is being taken care of. But we cannot just assume that if I die, my children will be better off with my brother than in a charitable children's institution. So those are the things that we have actually published these papers, and we ask governments all over the world to temper their enthusiasm and hankering after traditional values with reality, that left to their own devices, families taking care of an extra child are more likely to mistreat that child than a regulated charitable children's institution.
All right, we have to start winding down and actually close, right? We'll be thrown out of here, despite Prof being here.
Thank you. A quick one. I wanted to chime in on the gadget issue in terms of access. I think and this is from experience, I did not allow my children to have phones until 15. And I thought I was a safe parent until I hosted this teen party, not boy teen thing with a facilitator. And he asked them about pornography. They were like 17 young boys. And, you know, so he came to break down to the parents that it wasn't about whether they were accessing pornography. It was now what level. Like now they're going to a higher level of whom can they find on those sites. So with or without us having gadgets at home, my son was accessing this through whichever means. So it's not protective. We shouldn't feel safe that because we're not allowing gadgets that they're not accessing. I think the conversation should be safe and responsible use of gadgets or the interweb. Then the second thing is on a study also that I participated in between young people between 15 and 24. I won't go into details because it's not yet published, but it was last year. And we interviewed on sexual health and whatnot from Kibera to Meru to Nakuru to deep in Narok where we think, they don't even know Swahili. All of them were engaging in sex. All of them had access to digital spaces, irrespective of the socioeconomic status. And a lot of them are from the lower socioeconomic status. So I think we have to be very real with the kind of environment that we think our children are in safe spaces, but these things have to be, and I find people shy away from very tough conversations about sexuality and whatnot. They are getting this from other people as we pretend that
As
they're
we are
not.
very safe in
That's
our
the
houses.
conversation I'm having at Motherhood. I told you about Motherhood Unplugged. It's so
Yes.
important. Yeah.
You make this as your final thought as well.
Yeah. I also agree it's so important, but it's so difficult for us because we've been raised to think that it's taboo, it's dirty, it's disgusting. And I mean, people also think that it's just about the act in itself, whereas it's an ongoing conversation, 0 to 2. Just learn the correct words for your body parts. And we already have a issue with that. We can't even teach our kids the correct names for their body parts. 2 to 4, boundaries. I don't want to hug from you. Yet in our society, we force our kids to hug and kiss everybody as a sign of respect. When I think, there's a way of being respectful and polite without pushing them onto other people. Crossing their boundaries. I know my dad has a hard time when my kids are like, "Dad, I don't want to kiss." And he's like, "But I love you." But in my house, I'm like, "No, we respect our kids' boundaries." And I think this is a conversation that's ongoing from 0 till whatever age. And yeah, I think, it's a really important conversation.
Dad needs more kisses.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
No, my final thoughts. The conversation has been very good. I think my take home is that there's no manual for parenting. And the values we have around parenting will keep evolving with time and also with the societies in which we are in, even at the same time. They vary. The key thing is to ensure that you have a goal for raising these young people. And your goal, in my view, ought to be that when they get into this society that you are bringing them up into, that they thrive, that they are safe, and that they are happy. That should be the goal. And then you chart a path of parenting that gets them to that goal. And whatever you do, I wouldn't be able to judge you whether you're doing the right thing or wrong thing, unless I know what goal you are parenting them towards. And that's really my key message. And so we have to be mindful, we have to be, somebody said, intentional about that goal, and then design a path of parenting that leads to that goal. If you're in a society that is warlike, where everybody says when you're 18, you have to go and kill people, and then you raise your kid to be the guy who doesn't go out and kill people, he will not fit in that society. And so you have to make value judgment calls to say, am I fit in this society to begin with? And do I stay here and raise my child here? And so on. So it can get to that extreme. But at the end of the day, if you think it is an okay society, it's a good place to raise your children, raise them to fit in this society, because then they will thrive and they'll be happy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof.
My takeaway from here is that to grow in my parenting, to change my parenting style as my children grow, and also to be prepared to learn from them, because they're getting to spaces where they know much more than I do, especially in areas of technology. So to be prepared to listen, learn, and maybe adapt. Maybe.
Maybe. A huge maybe. Yes.
I'll make 2 comments. One is that you can choose when to marry. You can choose when to have children. You can choose how many to have. But once you have them, you cannot choose when to raise them. You got to raise them now. You can't put them on hold to raise them later. That's one part. The other part has to do with, my brother talked about communal raising. That used to work in a village setting where the community had similar values. Today, in the city setting, you can be in an estate without being in a community. So we do need to recreate communities of people with values that we want these children to adopt when they grow up. So that if my children are at her house, I know exactly what values she has. That can be done. That must be done.
All right. You've all done very well. Parents, children, take heart. No one has a manual. We are all winging it. All right. Thank you very much for coming tonight and your thoughts. Makofi sana for my panel and yourselves. I hand it back to Anthony.
Thank you very much. It is. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Smart. I think Smart always is a smart guy, right? He's a smart guy, right?
Parented well.
Let's clap for the. He's good enough.
Good enough.
So my takeaway, we are all winging it. Even the professors, they are still winging it.
Yes.
The people who think I've been parented well are still winging it. But I also feel no more. And thank you, Dr. Wala and Tatiana, because me, I take break. In the morning on Saturday, they know. They don't knock on my bedroom door because I'm sleeping in. It's my me time. And I used to think maybe I'm a bad father, but I realize I'm okay. So even take your time. You know, I've learned that. I would keep taking my time. I increase theirs, but I also increase mine. Isn't it? Thank you so much for coming. Every time we do this, we say this is the best live conversation we have had. And I think this qualifies to be the best.
Absolutely.
Let's clap for ourselves. For the people who haven't interacted with us before, so as a university, we believe our main job is to create knowledge. And that knowledge is not just in papers of those things they do, organisms, and they study in the lab. This is another way of creating knowledge and bringing conversations to life. So Live Conversations is our public lecture series. If you go to other universities, you'll find other researchers doing the same things. But for us, this is one of our way of giving back to the community, and we continue to do this. This is our 9th, so we have done 9. Every quarter, we do 1. So in May, as sure as the sun rises in the morning, we'll have another live conversation. So you're invited in May, and then we'll do another one in August, then we'll do another one in November. And it will never be about, studying cancer organisms and how they cause now. It's about parenting. You have seen the thing that was going there, social media, addiction. The first one was about sex life of Kenyans. So we keep going and going. So I want to take time to appreciate our panelists. And because my performance review is near, I will start with the boss. Mary. I want to thank you so much for making time to be with us. Haven't we learned from them, isn't it? Let's appreciate them again.
You have problems.
Where is the camera? When you start, we start with the youngest, since she's the youngest. Tatiana. Let's appreciate you. Stella? So thank you very much. When we go down on the ground floor, there is tea and snacks, so don't leave them. They are yours. Please, if you leave them, we have nowhere to take them. We've got an hour, 15 minutes to be on campus. After that, we'll be, thrown out. So we've got an hour to have tea and meet a new friend. You know what Stella said? Stella said when we go for interviews, we're all on our phones. So when we go down, we take tea and not be on our phones. We talk. And don't go to, I won't go to Carol because I know her. So Carol, don't come say hi to me. Say hi to a new person. Then if you drove to this venue, we need to validate your parking ticket. The lady who was giving the bags here called Mary, and then Winnie, please stand up. Winnie, stand up. Stand up. So Winnie will help you. And finally, this event, the 9th we have done, are put together by a dedicated team. This is not their job. By the way, this is not my primary job. My primary job is to market the hospital and the university. This is not my primary job, but we have a committee that comes together to plan this, and I want us to recognize them. I ask them to stand, led by Winnie, Winnie is our manager for research. There is Dr. Washira there. Dr. Washira is our co-chair, so we chair it with her. There is the guy who's here is Stephen or Siox. There's a Gen Z who is a bit, who is hiding there. Her name is Corinne. Have I left? And then Mary, of course. Mary is our most hardworking member of the committee. He's our logistics person. Have I left anybody else? Good. And then, of course, we have a very good financier. And the financier is none other than Professor Lukoye. Thank you so much for always funding this. It costs money to do this, and the dean is very gracious through the medical college to be able to fund this. So thank you very much, and you may take your leave.